Nothing predicted that I would work for 3 decades now on Muslim issues in France. So I started 30 years ago. I was a student in anthropology, and my first encounter with the Muslim Brotherhood was quite unexpected. My book on brotherism was issued last year. One colleague, a researcher, decided to send a letter to everybody, to all the Department of Sociology of Islam and Anthropology, to say, don't read this book, it's a calumny, it's Islamophobic. He did that because he was Muslim. So he decided that because he was Muslim and I was not, of course, he was right. And after, there was Florence Bergeaud, who is a very known Islamologist, who started to harass me in the Twitter for 100 tweets. I mean, really unpleasant tweet. To work on Muslim Brotherhood, as you can imagine, is not easy. And sometimes, if you stay too long, I would say you can become unwittingly its messenger.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me in tonight's tonight's Yasmine Mohammed podcast. Today, I have with me Dr. Florence. Dr. Florence is a distinguished academic and researcher who specializes in the study of Islamic normativities within secular contexts in Europe. Florence has written about the processes of Salafi indoctrination, considering both its fundamentalist and political dimensions and how it interacts with the neoliberal and postmodern political spheres. Florence, welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me. I have so many things I want to speak to you about. You and I have had many conversations face to face. And I think that it's really important to acknowledge at the beginning that the work that you have done as an academic, as a university professor, has caused you now to require 24/7 security. And whenever you and I meet for lunch, you are always under police protection. So I'd like to start off with speaking to you about how you ended up researching the Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamist groups within their web, what inspired your research as an anthropologist in that direction, and then what erupted because of you getting involved in this research. What happened in your life for you to now end up being under police protection? So a very big question for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Yasmine, for your invitation. First of all, I must say that I have no Muslim background. Also, my grandmother, or parents, or grandparents lived from French origin, lived part of, or sometimes entire life in North Africa, in Algeria and Tunisia. But other than that, nothing predicted me that I would work for 3 decades now on Muslim issues in France. So I started 30 years ago. I was a student in anthropology, and my first encounter with the Muslim Brotherhood was quite unexpected. So let me explain my first steps as a student or in anthropology. To work on Muslim Brotherhood, as you can imagine, is not easy. And sometimes, if you stay too long, I would say you can become unwittingly its messenger. So when I started a master in anthropology at the University of Bordeaux during the 1990s, I wanted to work on the hijab issue. So at the time, it was a new phenomenon. Muslims, women were from North Africa or Turkey, and they largely abandoned the veil, which was seen as an old habit, an ancient tradition. But in 1980s, 1990s, we start to see the veil flourishing on the head of young Muslim women. And so my question was, what was that? How the women themselves were justifying to wear the hijab. So to answer those questions, I started an in-depth investigation. As you know, that anthropologists are doing long-term fieldwork. They spend time, many months, sometimes years, to study the milieu, the habits, the narratives. We call that observation participant, observation and participation in the same time. This means that you make yourself adopted by the people you study. So they assign you a role, an image, a status, and then your job is to analyze the verbal and non-verbal interactions. So at this time, I landed in a mosque called El Ouda in the city of Bordeaux. And this mosque was very different from the others. It presented itself as an Islamic center. That's much more than a prayer room, which was the norm at the time. So it involved schools, cuisine, community support, children activities, and many other things. And it was known in all the region of Bordeaux. The imam was very young, speaking a good French, well integrated, and so on. So inside the Islamic Center, women were invited to wear the veil, whether they were going to pray or any other activities which were not involving worship. And I followed these women for months in their activities. And because I was a student, I was quickly invited to be integrate in a circle. And this circle of teaching was called halakhat. And in this halakhat, in these circles, I could ask many questions, and the Muslim sisters and the most educated were very keen to answer all my questions, to explain me, to demonstrate, to talk to me about the beauty of Islam, the very positive role of the woman in the Ummah, and so on, because they knew that in France, the Islam had no good reputation, so they was really insisting on the beauty and the positive aspects. But of course, as an anthropologist student, I was very aware that the way they were teaching me Islam was adapted to my particular case. And what I had to do is to understand what they wanted me to do or to be. And it was clear that they wanted to having me converted, to learn Arabic, to enter their world, to share their vision of the world, and not just sharing the same worship. So they started me quite quickly to teach me in French their main authors, which were Hassan el-Banna, Said Qutb, Zainab al-Ghazali, with the female figure of the Muslim Brotherhood, and of course Youssef al-Qaradawi. All are very influential authors in the Muslim Brotherhood. Of course, they would never admit that they were part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and even any contact with this brotherhood. They clearly needed to stay hidden. And at the time, Brotherhood was known very little by very little number of experts as a radical organization. So when I reported the facts I observed, when I reported my analysis to my university, I was asked immediately to not pay attention to that and not talk about this finding. At the time, and unfortunately, I'm afraid it's still the case, talking about Muslim Brotherhood was a taboo. The risk was to feed the extreme right wings, the races, the Islamophobia, and so on. So most of my colleagues, my supervisors, advised me to study another place, or some other explain that what I was doing and what I was finding was just wrong, and that they could not be part of the Muslim Brotherhood in a secular-like country such as France. So there was a complete denial of this reality. And so what I learned immediately in my fieldwork is that during this period of time, which lasts almost 1 year of very active survey, there was two lines. A line between the Muslim Brotherhood and the rest of the society was constructed by both parts. Nobody wanted to know that Muslim Brotherhood exists, and of course Muslim Brotherhood were hidden. So also this immersion was made me realize that what I have summarized in my latest book, Le Frérisme et ses réseaux, I will talk about that later, they carry a vision of the world, a vision of the history, a supremacist identity, and a project of caliphate, which they distinguish them from all other Muslims. And it's very important because it's this three-dimension vision, identity, and plan is still a taboo, even if it's now, I think, hegemonic. It's became hegemonic in the mosques and in the Islamic education institution in France. It's true in France, but when I visit Belgium, it's the same, and the UK or Sweden is also very much influenced by the Muslim Brotherhood and the what I call the frérisme, the brotherism. So this start of my survey has been an experience that I've never forget, because after 1 year they decided that I was not fit to enter in the Brotherhood, because actually I didn't know that, but I was in a process of recruitment. But of course I didn't know, because they don't say you are recruited. You don't ask to be recruited in a Brotherhood. You are recruited by it, and the process is very long. And so clearly I was not fit to do this work, to enter in it, and I didn't want, of course, to. I was just doing my job of student, and so to prevent me to carry on to study, they decided to. They explained to the whole community around that I was working for the police, that I was extreme rights and Islamophobic and so on. And it works extremely well, because from one day to another, all the doors were closed. So it's the way, that means that somebody who tells you that is working and knows the Muslim Brotherhood, either he is Muslim Brotherhood itself, or is not very, or is dealing with it. And I think that most of the academic work around Muslim Brotherhood are made by people who are sometime in it, but mostly very friend to it. And I'm not. This is why I have some problems.
Yeah. Yeah, I have no doubt about that. I completely agree with that. That's very true in all of the English literature that I've read and English books that I've seen on the Muslim Brotherhood. I absolutely agree with you. So they started calling you far right. They think that all the doors closed. This is, of course, going to affect your research. But how did you end up in police protection? How did it go that far?
Okay, so I was now 30 years ago, so I had to stop my survey at this time, and I started to do another survey in the halal market, which was much more open to people like me, because they needed me to spread the norms of the halal market, because it's not just a market of meat or food, it's all ideas, it's norms which are conveyed by these objects and this food. So I could carry on to work on the way that Islamic norms are combining with neoliberal activities and norms to produce something which can be called as a global Islam, and which conveys the fundamentalist of brotherism. So it took me a long time to understand the process and to build my theory of the existence of brotherism.
Okay, so I'm just going to pause you for 1 second just to clarify things with you. So your research on the hijab and how it became so normalized with the younger generations in France, you had to pivot from that because of the smear campaign, because they recognized that you were not going, that the da'wah wasn't going to work, that you weren't going to convert. And so they decided to smear you, and so you could no longer continue your research in that direction, but you pivoted towards halal markets because it's all of that information that you had learned about, Islam and Muslims in Europe and the ideology of the Islamists and all of that. You wanted to be able to take all of that information and use it in some other anthropological research that was going to be, relevant to the work that you were doing. And so now the halal market, I have to say, is, I'm going to have to ask you to really be explicit with us, because this is an area like hijab. People talk about hijab. We're kind of familiar with it. The women of Iran have made it very clear, how most women in these countries feel about hijab. But the halal market, especially the way it's like a mafia in the Eastern or in the Western world, in Europe, etc., is so unknown to most people. In fact, Ricky Gervais, who is a very prominent atheist, him and I had interaction on Twitter where he felt that my criticism of the halal market made me like Islamophobic. He thought that anybody who criticized the halal market, and this is a very prominent atheist who criticized religions, and he's a very prominent vegetarian as well, and animal lover. And you can talk to us about how the halal market is actually incredibly vicious to animals. But talk to us about what is the halal market, just on a very sort of broad, general sense. How would you describe the whole phenomenon?
Yeah, well, it took me a decade, 10 years, to understand that there was a very discrepancy between the narrative, the official narrative of halal, and the reality, and why there was it was so different between what we say about halal and the reality of halal. After 10 years, of 20 years even, I started to write a book which I called The Halal Market, or the Invention of a Tradition. Because what I found by drawing the story, the history of the halal market, is that it was an invention of the 1980s. It was the production of an encounter between the neo-fundamentalism Islamic and the neoliberalism. So, and I saw that in my evolution of career as an anthropologist. I saw the steps of this invention from a halal meat market to a global Islamic economy that weighed now thousands of billions of dollars each year. It's a huge market, global market. So how is it possible that everything which can be sold, produced, and market could be halal or haram, licit or illicit, permit or forbidden? how it's possible that everything in a market, from the food to the fashion to the bank to the medicines, can be halal or haram. So for me, the global market was invented in the 1980s. So I explained that in my book. And its model was the kashrut, the industrial kashrut. The difference between the kashrut and the halal is that the kosher was invented to protect and to finance the diaspora, the Jewish diaspora, several centuries ago. And then this kashrut has had an evolution through the time and became industrialized. While the halal is born industrialized. Before the 1980s, nobody talked about halal. It does not exist because food in the Muslim countries are illicit for Muslims. So this is the product of the globalization. When the Muslims start to emigrate, then the countries who welcome the Muslim start to make halal, or the countries who want to export in Muslim countries started to make halal. So it is really a matter of globalization. So there is, for me, 3 stages in the development and expansion of halal. The first stage was the creation of an industrial method of Islamic slaughter. So we invent, from nothing, because of course, in the Quran and in the Sunnah, there's nothing about the industry of halal. So from almost nothing, but with the model of kosher, Iran will have a very important role in the normalization of halal meat. And that gives a rise of halal meat market, 1980s, 1990s. The second stage corresponds to the publication of a halal standard. And the halal standard is not published by any OIC or Islamic institution or organization. It's given and it's proposed by the Codex Alimentarius. The Codex Alimentarius, it's an international body of normalization of food for security, for health, and so on. So this halal standard, built by the Codex Alimentarius and very much influenced by Malaysia, which is a very special country for that. I will come back to that later. This gave rise to a halal industry that goes from, as I said, medicine, everything which can enter in the body by mouth or by the skins, for example, must be halal. You also have in Malaysia, for example, halal water. How is it possible, halal water? Halal water is possible because it's declared halal when the machine who clean the bottle, who produce the plastic bottle, are without alcohol. So if this condition is met, then you can have halal water on the bottle. So everything, even fish can be halal, everything you can imagine can have halal. And it's because of the definition by the Codex Alimentarius of what is halal, even if this is not a religious institution. What is interesting is that was, the Codex Alimentarius norm was not, didn't make any controversies. You could imagine that the Muslim people would say, but we don't want this norm. But it is the opposite. They accept this norm because it separates what is halal for what the commodities for Muslims and the commodity for non-Muslims. And so it divides the world into Muslim and non-Muslim, and it goes very well with Salafism and brotherism. So, and the third stage, starting in 2010s, it is the birth of a global Islamic economy. The halal food or the halal product made by Muslim for Muslim, because it was made by non-Muslim for before, sorry, it was made by non-Muslim for Muslims. And after the 2010s, they decided to be autonomous, to finance, to produce, and to sell halal products. Of course, it's still it's the idea. Ideally, when you see, I mean, today, for example, I suppose it's in America the same, but in Europe, when you see a halal butcher, it has meat, it sells meat from conventional sellers, which just sometimes have a part of is selling as halal. But the idea at the end of the day, the plan, the project is to make sure that it will be made by Muslim for Muslim. So when if you want, for example, open a halal shop, you can, because nobody will prevent you to do it. But at the end, you will find somebody to tell you, but you're not Muslim, so you cannot sell it. So I'm going to replace you by a Muslim. So that's the finality of the halal market. So halal makes money, of course, we know that, but more importantly, it spread the fundamentalist norms, the Islamic way of life that the brothers want.
I just want to offer an anecdote here, because when this halal industry started, it was almost like a joke. It was a farce, because I was part of the Muslim community at that time. And it was like, what is this halal thing that they're all talking about? What does that even mean? Because as a Muslim, you don't eat pork, you don't drink alcohol. Everything else is halal. You just, but suddenly it was like, no. We can't eat this chicken because it's not halal, but we can eat this chicken. And I have to tell you, my family, all those people that you mentioned from the Muslim Brotherhood, Yusuf Qaradawi, Hassan al-Banna, Sayyid Qutb, these were household names. These were the people that I grew up with, hearing their sermons, reading their books. This was my life. And even within my family and within my community, there was where did this come from? Pakistan, Malaysia, Iran? Who started this haram thing, or this halal industry thing? Like, it was a very strange thing. But exactly what you said, and I'm continually amazed at how well you understand the Muslim community for somebody. I mean, I guess you're an anthropologist, it makes sense. You really do, you have studied them very well. What you said about Dar al-Harb and Dar al-Islam, basically the Muslims and the non-Muslims, the us and them, the separation is such a lure. You know what I mean? Like, it was such a great thing to create that division, and to encourage people to start to see themselves as different and special and superior, which they already were anyway. So it was just like confirming that belief that they had, that no, we're going to ask KFC and Burger King and all of these huge corporations to make things especially for us. And so yeah, it's just really interesting how, as you're talking about the history, I was living that trajectory. And then suddenly you saw the halal stamp on everything. And like you said, it started off with the meat first, and now it's all the way up to water bottles are halal or not halal. It's a joke, and it's very obvious that it's just a money-making industry.
But the implication of that are huge, because it's a way of entry in the industry, in the powers. it's because of this halal market evolution that I conceptualize the idea of brotherism, which means this method of using the technology, the power of the Western societies to Islamize it from the inside. So it's very different from the jihadism, which is an attack, a frontal attack, violence. This method are much more
insidious.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And this is why my latest book, The Brotherism, is the following of the halal market. But I wanted to explain how this ideology produced by Hassan al-Banna and the followers, and but also the different branches of the political Islam, such as Youssef al-Qaradawi and Maududi, also coming from Pakistan. All these branches are not just violent. They don't want to get rid of Europe or Western societies. No, they want to take what they have the better for them. So they like, for example, I hear so often that Muslims do not like European, they do not like Western society, but they like Western society and European society. They just want them to be Islamized, to take the better of both. And this is something we don't understand. And because we don't understand that, we don't understand the wokist movement. We don't understand why the young people like to be with Muslim, like to be now with the pro-Palestinian activists, because the pro-Palestinian activists say, okay, well, come with us. We have a worldview. We have a project. They are enthusiastic. Mm-hmm. As I mean, you know, the meaning of enthusiasm in theos from God. They are enthusiastic, and so our Western youth is a bit depressing. So both the encounter of both is very visible since the 7th of October, where you can see the influence that the brotherism have all over the world on the student, on the young people, and especially on the students. And also because there is a leftist ambiance that helps, of course. But to understand this ideology, we have to read. We have to read Qaradawi. We have to read the one I call the engineer of Islam with the Maududi. We have to understand they are theocrats. And theocracy is not compatible with democracy. So it's them or us. There's nothing we can do. It will not merge. It will not be able to discuss. It's impossible to debate with them. They want to get rid of the democracy, not to get rid of us, because they think we are Muslim by ignorance, but we are Muslim. Everybody for the brotherists are Muslim. So they want to get rid of the democracy because they also think that they are more universal than democracy, because Islam managed the earth and the sky, the supra. So they think that they are more universal than us. So the brotherism is this ideology, like the communism is not to be reduced to Marx. The brotherism cannot be reduced to Hassan al-Banna. It's much wider than that. The role of the brotherhood now, as such, is now to form a wider circle of affiliates, if you want, and that's the Youssef al-Qaradawi called that the Islamic movement. So it's something huge. And for me, what happened after the 7th of October in different capitals, from Stockholm to Johannesburg, from London to Kuala Lumpur. This protest under the Palestinian flag is the Ummah. It is the start of this Islamic movement, which Youssef al-Qaradawi was dreaming of after Hassan al-Banna and the others.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. He probably couldn't have even dreamed it like this. He probably couldn't have even ever imagined that he would see the kinds of signs that we're seeing across the Western world right now, and hearing the chants and the slogans that people are saying these days. It's absolutely shocking.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you again to try and tell us, how did that lead to you end up becoming under police protection?
Yeah, well, when my book were out in January 2023, it took 2 months when people realized that I've published this book in the university. And so immediately one of the...
And this was the book about the halal industry. It's not the
No, it was
Brotherhood
the
one.
brotherism.
The Brotherhood one, okay.
The halal industry went, smooth. Nothing really wanted to talk about because it was annoying, but because it was capitalism, I could still write it. But when my book on brotherism was issued last year, then it took me two months. One colleague, a researcher, decided to send a letter to everybody, to all the department of sociology of Islam and anthropology, to say, don't read this book. It's a calumny, it's Islamophobic, etc. And he did that because he was Muslim. So he decided that because he was Muslim, and I was not, of course, he was right. But, the letter was distributed. I answered this letter, so it calms down. And after that, there was François Burga, who is a very known Islamologist, who started to harass me in Twitter for 100 tweets. Really unpleasant tweets. And so it has the opposite effect. When people say, what's going on? And so they started to read. And so the book were selling very well. It was really wide interest. So I was invited to the TV, and it took a very, very large audience and met a large audience. And so the controversies carried on, and it began violent because I was much more known. And then it became violent, and so death threats happen, and so trials happen. One guy is in prison because of this death threat, and it's still, I'm still under police protection all the time. And I'm not invited anymore in any university. Also, I'm a permanent researcher, academic permanent researcher. I have many titles and papers and books, but I can't go to the university to teach, to just meet the students. And that's a big problem because I don't mean I'm right. And it's a matter of debate. Science is a matter of debate always. Otherwise, we don't progress. But the problem is that it's not possible anymore in a high school or in a university. There is one side and no debate possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And Florence, I have to say to you, I am actually in utter awe of you, not just as an academic and as a researcher and as a fierce, academic, but as a woman too, that twice they tried to ruin your career and they tried to stop you from speaking about the research and your findings and the truth, basically bringing evidence forth. And they tried to stop you from researching about the hijab, and you continued your research and you went into the halal industry and you continued your research and you talked about the different Islamist groups, the Brotherhood, and so on throughout Europe. I commend you. I absolutely commend you. I know what it's like to be receiving those death threats. I know what it's like to be receiving that hate. And it is incredibly difficult. This is your livelihood. This is your family. You know what I mean? Like, people don't understand. They're seeing you now, an accomplished woman on this podcast. They're not, I need them to understand the amount of personal sacrifices that you've made. Obviously, you've made career sacrifices as well because of your integrity. And if only there were more people like you, if only there were more people who had as much integrity as you have in your pinky toe, then we wouldn't be in this position. But what happens is, as soon as people start to get thrown these slurs on them from the beginning, when they said to you, you can't talk about hijab because you're Islamophobic, you're far right, most people would have pivoted completely and gone down a completely different research field. Most people just get scared off. They're continually ruining people's careers, ruining people's reputations because they are trying to silence them. In the way in Iran and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and in all of, Afghanistan, etc., they silence people by killing them, by imprisoning them. Here they silence people by doing these kinds of duplicitous things like ruining their careers, etc. What I find to be incredibly frustrating and, infuriating, actually, it makes me very angry that we let it work, that we allow them to silence us. When you're in Iran or in Pakistan or in Afghanistan or in Sudan or in Somalia or in Libya, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you have no choice but to keep quiet, because it's a life or death situation. But people in France and Sweden and Germany and America and Canada, if only they had a little bit of courage, just a tiny bit of courage. They don't even need to have as much as you have had, but just enough courage to push back instead of to completely cower when these bullies try to silence them. Then things wouldn't be as bad as they are now and getting worse, So I have a question for you, and what is the message that you have to your fellow freedom-loving liberals in Europe and beyond? Is there a message that you have for all of these people?
Well, the message for Anglo-Saxon audience would be that don't believe when they say that laicite is Islamophobic, racist, or any other things, or intolerant. It's not true. As French, we have a bad reputation towards Islam, and it's unfair. What we want is to protect our values, our norms, but we are, the law of 1905, the law of laicity, is just to make sure that one worship, one religion will not take over the others. That doesn't mean we don't want to talk or we don't want that the religion exists. So, but this bad reputation is part of the attack of the Islamists, who are, because France resists to this trend. So France is very much attacked because of that. But France doesn't confuse Islam and Islamism. We are fighting against Islamism because we know that there has been until 1980s an Islam who were able to adapt to the society. So that makes the whole literature, and the French literature in particular, not well understood or even not wanted at all in a British or in English countries or Anglo-Saxon country. My book is going to be, is translated and published in Denmark, where it really find it's public. It will be published in German, in Sweden, And in England, there's no way I can publish my book, while everything I write is applying to what happened in Britain, especially in Britain, where the situation is very serious. So why don't they want to read other than what they produce? What happened to our countries or democracy? What happened with the lack of courage, like you say? We used to be much better than that. The fact, I mean, you said that how I did, I supported that for many years. Well, because I'm passionate of my work. I'm passionate about truth, otherwise I would not be a researcher. And I want to know the end of the story. I want to win. I don't want, because I know that our countries, our European countries, if we carry on this way, we are going to lose. I mean, that means we will lose everything. And so we have children, we have grandchildren. We don't want that for them. So yes, wake up. I would say to everybody, yes, wake up, and everybody can do something about that at its own level. You don't need to be an academic. You don't need to be an activist like you, Yasmine, and very well known now. You just need to be at your place and talk about it.
Oui, je t'aime. Beautiful. I love it. Everything you said. Yeah, this is why you're such a hero to me. Thank you so much, Florence. I 100% agree with you. And I'm very, very grateful that you are fighting this fight alongside other, open-minded, freedom-loving people. Laicite is the only way forward. It is the only thing that will save us from groups of people who wish to impose their totalitarian regimes on the rest of us. All right, I'm going to open it up to questions now. We have a couple of people that have raised their hands. We're going to start with Anya.
Oh, hi everybody. Florence, it's very moving for me to meet you and to hear your story. So I'm not going to repeat everything that Yasmine said. I'll just join in her all the sentiments that she expressed. So thank you so much. My question is very quick and minor. The person who initiated this movement against reading your book, even not arguing on any kind of matter, but just don't read her book. Was that person Muslim or not?
Yes.
Okay.
He was supposed to be an ex-Muslim brother. And in my book, I said, well, maybe, but maybe not, because he didn't change any activities. So, of course, it was very sensitive for him, I suppose.
Because it would break my heart if I knew that that person wasn't even a Muslim, but was already getting ready to get on a bandwagon to shame you. Okay.
Oh, but he succeed to have the ears of and the attention of many non-Muslim professors who today never invite me in any university.
Unbelievable. Well, sorry for all your trouble that you're in, and thank you for everything.
But in a positive side, I'm invited everywhere else. So,
That's fantastic.
Universities.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, but I just want to go back to Florence, what you mentioned about having trouble getting your book published in English, even though it's being published in so many other languages and selling very well. Somebody made the comment here, I don't understand why the British don't see the problem. And you made a comment about that too, of like the people in Britain right now, they should be the first ones in line to read your book. Like we are watching objectively, we are seeing what's happening to their country, but they are just like the three monkeys, right? They just don't want to see, they don't want to hear, they don't want to talk about it, they just don't want to acknowledge what's happening to them. So it is very frustrating that you're being silenced in the universities, but it is like terrifying and sad that the Anglosphere, and I had the same trouble with my book. I had to self-publish my book in English, but it's been translated in, 15 other languages. But in English, no way. There's no English-speaking publisher that would touch it. So this is a problem. This is why we are in such a bad situation. At least in France, their eyes are open, they're paying attention. Like you said, they understand the difference between a Muslim and an Islamist. They know what's going on. But when you don't know what's going on, then you're just a sitting duck.
Yeah, and they are, I come from England. I was in England 3 days ago, and they are very bad situation. They are frightened. They are just frightened. These people now allow themselves in the street calling for caliphate, calling for putting the white people, they want to convert the world, their environments. They are just at home, and the others are not anymore, and they are frightened. My feeling is that they don't want to talk about because they feel that they cannot do anything. So sometimes we don't want to hear about problems we cannot solve, and that's as bad as that, I think, in England. So, but you have some people like Douglas Murray, for example.
Yes.
Clear.
Yes.
His analyses are perfect. It's
Yes.
Everything.
Yes, and his book,
lonely.
The Strange Death of Europe, is like a prophecy now when you read it.
Yeah, and it seems very lonely.
Yes, for sure. Sarah, you're next.
Hi, Yasmin. It's very
Hello,
nice
beautiful.
to see you. Hi, Florence. I'm so happy you're here. And it's like this went in a direction I did not expect when you started talking about the halal market, because nobody talks about the halal market. And I sent you the question and I did not expect you to go into details like this. Like I thought we would just touch upon it and we would move on. This was amazing. I really appreciate the fact that you know so much. And you're talking about it. And when we say it's not Islamophobia, because it's not a phobia, it's a rational fear, it's trauma. Like I grew up in Iran. We had Eid al-Adha, that sacrifice Eid. And I remember they would bring in a lamb or a sheep or sometimes a calf. And we would just bond with this animal 24 hours, 48 hours throughout the weekend because it's celebration. And we were children and would not understand what's happening. And it would happen every year, and we would I could see this in the face of my cousins who were younger than me growing up, and I could see that feeling of fear, that what is I'm gonna go on a rant now. You mentioned Islamic slaughter, and you know what I'm talking about because that's what we witnessed as children growing up. And I'm going into supermarkets here in Canada, and I see halal. I'm like, what the hell is happening to this country? Like, what happens to your animal rights? What happens to all these vegans and vegetarians? And I'm a vegetarian. I go eat outside at a food court or whatever. If I see the halal sign, I don't even go near. Doesn't matter that I'm not eating meat. If they are selling halal, I'm not buying anything from them. And the fact that they don't understand why, like I go and ask, are you halal? Yeah, we are. And they're so happy and they're so excited and they think they're being inclusive. I'm like, no, thank you. Can you speak to that Islamic slaughter that you mentioned? Because I think people don't understand. And I know it might get graphic and I'm not sure how graphic Yasmin is okay with, but I'm thinking this would actually help the Westerners understand how horrifying it is and how bad it gets for the animals. It's not just about eating meat anymore. Can you explain? Because like halal fish makes absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah.
There's no blood. That was the shock of the century for me to go in and see, oh, there's halal fish. Oh, there's a halal mark on the water bottle. How do you do that? There's no blood. It doesn't make any sense to me. But Islamic slaughter is behind all of this. And can you explain to these people who are watching right now what that actually means?
Okay, I'll try because it's technical issues, a bit complicated. Everything in my book and of course it's not translated yet in English. For the pure industrial purity, it's the produce of what I said, the norm of the Codex Alimentarius, which decided that all products which have alcohol, even infinitesimal amount of alcohol, or pork or anything, will not be declared halal. But that means that all the acidifiants, the preservatives, and all these things are usually not halal. So because of that, they could build a huge industry of alternative halal food. When it comes to Islamic slaughtering, the habit was to unblood the animal. I mean, in a place where there's no precaution, we kill the animal, and of course it was not fit for an industrial country and a mass production country. So what the way it happens is that when we started to export the meat to the Muslim country, we export normal meat, I mean, I would say conventional meat, to the Muslim country. And because of the verse in the Quran who say the meat of the people of the book is licit to Muslim, there was no problem. Until Iran, when the Ayatollah Khomeini took the power, he decided that the meat coming from the European country or the Christian of country were not licit anymore. So he sent Mola into Europe or France or other country in America to control the process. And so they invented a process, industrial process. They decided that, like kosher meat, the stunning would not be allowed. So the result is that the animals are slaughtered in industrial chain, but without stunning, which is of course a complete contradiction with the value and the animal protection.
It's torture.
And we know that forever. I mean, we know that for 30, 40 years, and we do nothing. We do nothing because it's Muslim and we don't want to appear as Islamophobic and so on. We don't do anything also for kosher. I mean, there is a problem also to the kosher chain, but it's smaller problem, but it is a problem. But because it's religious, we don't touch about that. So like the religion would not be able to adapt to the modern world, to the new technology. This is silly. So we leave that because of economic interest, corruption, and so on. And the European Union, for example, started to do a process of evaluation and study in order to impose the stunning before the slaughter. And finally, because of lobby, they gave up, and it's still carry on.
Thank you for that. Just a further small note. Sorry, Yasmine. This gets very graphic. What I remember from my childhood is that they would not cut the animal's neck completely because they wanted the blood to be pumped out and the animal would suffer to death. That's what Florence means when she says stunning. It's like when you stun the animal, the blood stops pumping out, but they would have the blood.
That's not true. That's a myth. The idea that when you stun the animals, the blood will not flow, it's a myth. It's absolutely wrong. It has been shown many times, but they still try to impose their unstunning way of slaughter.
Yeah, and in Islamic countries, they make sure that all the blood leaves the animal's body, and that's how they call it halal.
Yeah, but actually, it is true also in the industry. In a conventional, blood is carries bacteria, and so all animals are systematically bled, completely bled. whatever they are halal or not, it's the way it is in the industry.
But
I
if they're
didn't know that.
stunned,
That's yeah.
then they're not
didn't know
feeling.
that's normal. You didn't know that because it's part of the myth of halal.
That's very
That
interesting.
completely bled, but actually every animal is bled completely.
So truly, the only difference is in one circumstance, the animal is suffering,
Suffering
and in
more.
the other circumstances, the animal has been stunned, so it's not physically suffering as much.
Exactly.
So we
Wow.
make animals traumatized as well. It's like,
Well, they are going to be dead. So, but yeah, of course, it's bad. Yeah.
thank
So
you.
it's
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for bringing us down this line of questioning, as horrible as it is. I know, especially for you as a vegetarian and anybody else who's listening. Well, it's horrible for any animal lovers, obviously, for any normal humans. But what's really interesting to me is that we have all of this noise that we make about animal rights and things like that. And I remember KFC specifically getting under fire because of the way that they were treating the chickens was so inhumane. But in Canada now, all of the KFCs are halal. So they have made the choice that they are going to systematically torture these animals because they want to get that halal
Well,
stamp.
sometimes you have some countries which allowed a little stunning, post-cut stunning, pre-cut stunning. It depends, but it's not as safe and as sure as a normal stunning, and that's the point. So they sometimes do a small electric, but it's enough small to prevent the animal to move, but it's not big enough to make him insensitive. So it's worse. It's worse.
Horrible. That's much worse.
Mm.
Melissa, you're next.
Good evening, everybody. I'm from Cape Town, and I just had a comment, and Yasmine asked me to say the comment on camera. So in Cape Town, Muslims are the minority, but you wouldn't know that because everything is halal by default. KFC, McDonald's, Burger King. If you go to a government function, the catering will be halal, and the sign will be everywhere. Everything is halal: sweets, biscuits, chocolates. There was even a protest a few years ago because one of the big supermarkets, their Easter hot cross buns were not halal. And they protested for discrimination. And if you question it, you are the Islamophobe.
Yeah.
We had a work function the other day. There were 200 people, and 2 people were Muslim. The catering was halal to be inclusive.
Yeah. Yeah, the Indians have the same problem. Sometimes they started to say, okay, but Hindu doesn't allow to make the same rituals than Islamic. So they try to fight against this generalization of halal. And of course, they are threatened as, they are considered as Islamophobic.
Mm-hmm. I remember, speaking of South Africa, I don't know if it was Cape Town or Joburg or where it was, but I remember seeing this big controversy in South Africa because a Muslim man ordered a burger from Burger King and it had bacon on it. You heard about this? And then he was like sick for like 3 weeks. and Burger King was like, we will cancel all bacon. We will no longer carry it in our restaurants. It was like the biggest ridiculous thing.
So what initially happened was Burger King was initially all halal. And then they started serving bacon at certain shops. So everything else is halal. The only thing that's not halal is the bacon that you can add to the burger. And so this person obviously went to the wrong one. And they very famously... Cape Town is very big on the halal industry as well, and they promote themselves for halal tourism, the government, and also the halal slaughter. And I wouldn't be surprised if I think we're actually exporting some meat to the Middle East.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes, but you it's absolutely true. You are exporting a lot of meat to the Middle East. That's why there is a generalization of halal, because it's too complicated to change the chain and the process. So they do all halal. And it's the same in France. You have a slaughterhouse. They do all in halal, so that they are sure that to be able to supply all the butchers. And I mean,
unbelievable. Cindy, you're next.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Florence, so much for, I really, like Sarah said before, I really didn't know what to expect with this meeting. So I really, really appreciate everything you've said so far. And I put a comment in the chat, and a couple of people were asking me if I would share it with you. So I think I'll put that out there first. And then I have another comment and a brief question afterwards. But what I had put in the chat was that it amazes me how much ignorance and denial there is that Hamas is the Palestine wing of the Muslim Brotherhood, and their very name means Islamic resistance. So it just, it was interesting to hear, that this was about Muslim Brotherhood largely, and the harassment you've received, and, the attempts at dawah and indoctrination and all that. And it just still amazes me that people really just don't see that at all when they talk about resistance now, in terms of, especially, since October 7th. So that was one thing. I'm also a vegetarian, so it's a little bit hard for me, when I think very much about, the whole halal, as you were describing, which I never really understood. It's funny, when my son was in school, he was friends with a boy whose mother was Muslim, and we're Jewish. And I'm not especially religious, but being vegetarian, especially, I mean, I certainly don't have pork in the house. And my son's friend's mother, used to tell me that I was the only home where she would allow her son to come and play, and she knew he could eat here, without having to be worried about being exposed to pork or something that was unacceptable for him to eat. And I don't have any problem with anybody if they're truly, eating something for a religious reason or spiritual reason, whatever it is. But I was really struck when you said that when you were studying this or researching this, that you were, looking at the model of kashrut. And what really struck me is that, I mean, I'm making big generalizations, and I'm not really necessarily as the industry of it, but in general, most Jewish people that eat kosher do it for religious and spiritual reasons. They're not trying to impose it on anybody else. Whereas it sounds like with what you're describing about halal, it's more like they're trying to impose it on everybody else, and kind of bring it in a way that is really kind of sneaky. They're not telling people that what they're doing, they're just trying to make it as if it's a spiritual thing for their religion, but it's more than that. They're trying to impose it. And that makes me realize this whole thing that's going on now, especially in terms of the war, ever since October 7th, it really strikes me how much it's sort of like, I feel like the Islamists are twisting and turning everything around that they're accusing the Zionists of doing is actually everything that they're doing, but they're trying to shift the blame.
absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, so getting back to my simple question, although I don't know if it has a simple answer, but what can we do? I live in a small town in the San Francisco Bay Area, in California. And, I was taking my dog for a walk a couple of weeks ago, just down the street, about a block and a half away from me. One of my neighbors has a big, flag up with a fist, Free Palestine. And he was out, I don't know, he was doing something in his yard. And I tried to talk to him about it. I had never met him before. I had no idea who he was. And he got very defensive. He was like, is it, upsetting to you? Why does it bother you if I have this flag? We're fighting for freedom for all. And, I didn't want to argue with him about it. I just kind of walked away after a minute or so. But seriously, what can we do? I feel like I go to town council meetings in my little town and I'm called a Zionist pig. I know my town recently brought in, I guess this is common in California. I don't know if it's maybe other parts of the country or the world as well, but there were all these resolutions made, about the war, calling for ceasefire and all these protests. I mean, town council and city council meetings with literally hundreds and hundreds of people showing up and militants, and it's I don't know. What can we do?
Yeah, there are many things in what you said, and I agree. I mean, we are feeling the same thing in France at the moment. I know a lot of people who could have said exactly what you said. So it's a worldwide movement. That's very clear. The people don't know, people do not realize because they are not informed. And that's the main problem, or they are sometimes disinformed. So as long as we are not made aware of what happened and what is at stake and who are the protagonists, and so we are lost, and nobody wants to explain us. Me, I have the keys because I've observed that for many years. So I know where is the problem, what to do, and I have many propositions that I made to our French authorities. But I'm desperate to see that most of the citizens do not know anything. So how can they react if they are not well informed, if they are even disinformed and especially by the social networks and the brothers activism, which is extremely efficient, especially in a university. And the university is producing the knowledge, and the knowledge is used by our elites. So we have to look at what happened in the university, why they produce such lies. Why is that? So we know that because of the wokeism and so on, but I think we do not realize how much we are endangered, and especially Jewish at the moment. But Jewish is today, but it will be the others tomorrow. I mean, that's the line. And the line is to get rid of the Jewish because there are more resistance. But after that, the program is to carry on. After the Saturday, the Sunday, we said. So what to do? Ask for more information. Ask your mayor, ask your deputies to be well informed. Do not give up. That's important, but I understand you don't give up. The difference between kosher and halal, kosher was made to protect the diaspora. So it's not meant to be extensive. It's just to protect financially and culturally the Jewish diaspora. And so it evolves along the centuries. But halal is a completely different target. Halal is to build up the Islamic societies, and the Islamic society is a prophecy. It's the caliphate, so it's the first step to the caliphate. So it's one of the first steps to the caliphate, but it's a step towards the homogenization of Islamization in the world. It's the Islamic way of life. And it's a systemic and systematic approach. when I explained that all the history in my book on halal, and again, nobody wants to translate it, to talk about it, to discuss it. I may be wrong, but at least pay attention to that, to provoke a debate, a discussion. But no. So I think the problem is the information, the education, the university and the schools, and the information. And these are sectors which are influenced, strongly influenced by the leftists and the Islamists, because they understood that to enter within a society, you need to control the media and the social media and the universities. All the Islamism always take the power through the university. It's true in Iran. It was almost true in Algeria, but they failed. In Tunisia, but they may arrive in Turkey. Everywhere they go through the universities.
And we see that for sure happening today in universities all across the US and Canada. Yeah. But we see the same industry at play. We see the same ideology following the same playbook that they have done throughout the Middle East. Because if we recognize how it's repeating itself, then we can see when you talk about Algeria was able to stop it, Iran was not, then we can learn from the mistakes and we can understand how this industry works. You know what I mean? When people started to recognize, a lot of people would be so shocked seeing the woke and the Islamists, how they are, bedfellows right now. And we think, well, that's so strange. That doesn't make any sense. It's like, yes, because you're just looking at it here right now. You're not recognizing that this is a very old tactic and that they have used this over and over and over again. And it is actually a very tried and true tactic. It has been very successful.
Absolutely.
And it's easy to dismiss it and say, oh, they're crazy. How can these people be, like how can you have gays for Gaza or queers for Palestine? It doesn't make any sense. These guys are opposites, but they're absolutely not. They are united in their hate for our freedoms. They are united in their hate for our democracy, for Western values. And every single time in the past, it is the left, whether it's the Marxists, the wokeists, the whatever, the communists, whatever you want to call them, they are the ones that end up on the losing side of this battle every single time it has happened. Okay, Liv, you're going to be our last question, and then we're going to have to wrap it up.
Sure, I'll try to make it short. Florence, you said that we have to keep raising awareness as much as we can, that the people need to know. I would say I slightly disagree with your assessment in the people, because I think most people at this point, especially in Europe, actually are opposed to mass migration, especially from MENA, because they can see the destabilizing effects there have been. The problem now, I'd say, is that we have elites that for one reason or another refuse to listen to the people. So I guess my question is, how do we reach these elites or in our politics or in our business who don't seem to care about what people want or feel, since it just sort of keeps happening within our societies?
Well, I think elites know. Our elites know because of the secret services. They are well informed, but they don't want to do. They don't know what to do.
Okay, but can I just interrupt for one moment? And I just have to say this, Liv, because you were commenting that the politicians aren't following what the people want, but who did the UK just vote in? They just voted in Keir Starmer. They know what they are voting what they want. I don't think that the people all know. I disagree that the people all know. I think that what the elites probably know a lot more than the people do.
Yeah, I missed
But
this
anyway,
point,
sorry, I'll
yes.
let you continue, Florence.
Yeah, I missed this point. Yes, I think people don't vote in a good knowledge. They sometimes don't know what happens because we don't count, we don't evaluate, we don't talk about. But I think the elites know, but the elites don't know what to do. And also they are intoxicated by some other social scientists and experts who explain that everything is going fine and there's no problem. And but I mean, you find them amongst leftists. We have a big problem with the leftism today. So I would say that I mean, in France, but it depends also. For example, in France, citizens are not too badly informed because of the social network, because, for example, you have channels and radio who do their job, who inform. But if you take a country like Belgium, for example, I mean, if I talk like, if I give a talk like I did today, they will say, oh, how is it possible? They just don't know anything about what happened in their country. Also, this is a country, Belgium, who is going to be Islamized in, I would say, for 5 years, it's completely taken by Islamists. So it's the most dangerous country for Europe is Belgium today. The UK is an island, I would say. That's not anymore in the EU, but for the EU, Belgium is a dangerous country. With yeah.
Could I just comment on the UK? I mean, they half of their citizens didn't vote, so 30% voted for Labour, and I think it seems it was as much a vote against the Conservatives as it was for Labour. So they are a bit outliers, I would say, in the European context.
Yeah, I just think that, you know, other than Belgium, which Florence just described to us as an incredibly abysmal situation, I would say that the UK is not too far behind. And I think that most people that I have spoken to, that I have interacted with, that I have seen, whenever I go to London, I am just shocked and amazed at the socialists for Palestine stickers and all the keffiyehs everywhere. And it's just such normalized ignorance that this idea that most people know or that most people understand what we're dealing with, I think that's what I disagree with. Now, whether we're talking about the UK, whether we're talking about Canada, which is, I mean, ignorance, the capital of all ignorance, honestly, when it comes to this topic. And even when we're talking about America, it doesn't matter what country we're talking about. I think that especially when you're in a country where this problem is not so front and center and it's not affecting your everyday life, it's easy to not pay attention to it. And it's easy to fall into the TikTok rhetoric where things are very oversimplified and little bite-sized pieces of information. And if people aren't doing any learning, any understanding, any reading on their own, and if they're just picking up what's being said out there in popular culture, then they are going to be led down a very dangerous road. And unfortunately, I think that's where most people are. All right. Well, Florence, I'll let you have the last word. What are your final parting words to everybody? How would you like to conclude this? Would you like to tell us the title of your book in French? Because if I try to say it, I'll butcher it. And then maybe where they can get it in German or in Dutch or in Swedish.
So this is, well, we can't see it because
you know, there it is.
So this is le frérisme et ses réseaux. What we could translate it as brotherism and its networks, and it was published here last year.
Okay, wonderful. And you were saying it's available in In
In
Dutch right
German,
now.
yeah,
Mhm.
in Danish, in German, and in Swedish.
Okay, wonderful.
So,
And
hopefully
soon to
in
be in
English.
English. Yes.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much,
Thank you so
Yasmine.
much. Merci beaucoup. Bonne
Thank you.
soirée.
Thank you to all.
Good
Thank
night,
you very
everyone.
much.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
After hearing all that, you might be left wondering, what can I do? How can I help? Well, this is why I created a nonprofit called Free Hearts, Free Minds. We are the only organization dedicated exclusively to helping these free thinkers. We empower them with our programs and supportive community, lifting them up so they can heal, speak out, and begin to make positive changes, not just in their own lives, but within the broader community around them. If this is a cause that resonates with you and you want to make a difference, one way to do that is by donating to Free Hearts, Free Minds. Because not enough people care about this cause, we need people like you to help fuel this change. You can donate via our website, freeheartsfreeminds.com. Thank you. Every dollar you donate makes a difference.